The grand chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as emergency lights bathed the curved walls in deep red. Councillor Stone's hands trembled as he watched the holographic display showing the destruction of their outer defense fleet. The massive room, designed to showcase the Council's power with its towering pillars and floating platforms, now felt small and vulnerable. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence floated before him in crystal-clear detail. 30 of their most advanced warships, gone. Not damaged or disabled, but completely destroyed. The debris field stretched across 3 solar systems, marking a trail that led straight to the Council's headquarters. Commander Reed stepped forward, his decorated uniform reflecting the emergency lights. "High Councilors, the data is clear. A single human warship did this." He paused, letting the words sink in. "They call it the HSS Thunderchild." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Just 10 years ago, they had laughed at humanity's application to join the Council. They had called them primitive, pointed at their simple spacecraft, and dismissed them as children playing with toys they didn't understand. The main screen switched to a surveillance feed. The image made several councilors gasp. A massive warship moved through space, pure black against the stars, stretching 15 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull bore marks from the recent battle, but they were merely scratches on its surface. "That's impossible," Councillor Green interrupted. "No species can build a ship that large." "The structural integrity. The humans have clearly mastered technologies we thought impossible," Commander Reed cut in. "Our analysis suggests they're using some form of artificial gravity field to maintain structural integrity. But that's not the worst part." The screen changed again, showing energy readings that made even the military advisors step back. The Thunderchild's power output exceeded that of some small stars. A transmission cut through their discussion. Admiral Gray's face appeared on the main screen, his expression calm but stern. He wore a simple black uniform with minimal decorations, the typical human preference for understated authority. "Galactic Council," his voice filled the chamber. "For 50 years, you have systematically excluded humanity from galactic affairs. You have placed trade restrictions on our worlds, prevented us from establishing colonies in unclaimed systems, and treated us as inferior beings." He leaned forward slightly. "We were patient. We adapted. We advanced. And now we have proof of something far worse. Our deep space probes have discovered evidence of your greatest crime, the systematic destruction of emerging civilizations to prevent future competition." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had been allies for centuries turned to look at each other with suspicion and fear. "We are not here for revenge," Admiral Gray continued. "The HSS Thunderchild comes bringing justice. You have one planetary rotation to surrender control of the Council and submit to a full investigation of your crimes. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why underestimating humanity was your greatest mistake." The transmission cut off, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Commander Reed cleared his throat. "High Councilors, I recommend immediate evacuation. Our planetary defenses cannot." "Absolutely not." Councillor Stone stood up, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. We will not bow to primitive upstarts, no matter what tricks they've developed." He turned to Commander Reed. "Deploy the entire defense fleet, 2,000 of our most advanced warships against one of theirs. Let's show these humans why we have ruled the stars for so long." As the council members cheered their leader's defiant words, Commander Reed stepped back into the shadows. He had studied humanity's rise carefully over the past decade. He had seen how they took each setback as a challenge, each restriction as motivation to become stronger. Looking at the tactical displays showing the Thunderchild's approach, he knew with cold certainty that the Council's arrogance had finally met its match. The only question was how many would die before they accepted this truth. The warning had been delivered. Now, the galaxy would witness humanity's response to decades of injustice. 3 hours after Admiral Gray's warning, The Council's military command center buzzed with frantic activity. Massive screens covered the walls, showing the positions of their 2,000 warships forming a defensive sphere around the Council planet. Commander Reed walked through the busy room, watching officers from 23 different species working at their stations. His boots clicked against the polished floor as he approached the central command platform, where Counselor Stone stood watching the tactical displays. "Sir," Reed said, holding up a datapad, "I have the complete analysis of the Thunderchild's capabilities based on its battle with our outer fleet." Stone barely glanced at him. "More fear-mongering, Commander." Reed pressed on. "The human vessel's weapons aren't just powerful. They're beyond anything we've seen. They're using some form of focused gravity weapon that—" "Spare me the technical details," Stone cut him off. "Numbers, Commander. Give me numbers." Reed pulled up the battle footage. "In the outer fleet engagement, they destroyed 30 of our best ships in under 6 minutes. No misses, no wasted shots. Their targeting systems are perfect." He paused, letting that sink in. "And sir, they weren't using their main weapon." This finally got Stone's attention. "What?" "The energy readings suggest their main cannon was powered down during the entire battle. They destroyed our fleet using only their point defense systems." A junior officer rushed up, interrupting them. "Sirs, we've lost contact with the third defense station." All eyes turned to the main screen. The massive defense station, a ring-shaped fortress housing 10,000 soldiers and enough firepower to destroy small moons, had gone dark. A moment later, their long-range cameras showed the reason. The station had been cut clean in half, its pieces slowly drifting apart. "How?" Stone's voice trembled. "We had no warning, no energy readings, nothing on our sensors." Reed nodded grimly. "They've developed some form of stealth technology. Our sensors can't track their smaller craft." He looked at the tactical display. "Sir, I strongly recommend we accept their terms. We've now lost 3 defense stations and an entire fleet. We can't." "Enough." Stone slammed his fist down. "We are not surrendering to primitives, so they've developed a few new tricks. We still have 2,000 ships. We have the newest quantum torpedoes. We have—" "Sir," another officer called out. "Message from the Thunderchild." The main screen lit up, showing Captain Wells of the human vessel. Unlike Admiral Gray's formal appearance earlier, Wells wore battle armor, its black surface seeming to absorb light. "This is your final warning," Wells said simply. "We've demonstrated our capability without causing casualties. The defense stations were evacuated before we destroy them. This courtesy will not extend to our next targets." Stone stepped forward. "You dare threaten us? We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled the stars since your people were living in caves." Wells smiled slightly. "And in all that time, you never considered that someone might surpass you. Your arrogance is why we're here." His expression hardened. "You have 30 minutes to surrender. After that, we start removing your ability to wage war." The screen went dark. Stone turned to his officers. "Deploy everything we have. I want every ship, every weapon targeted on that human monstrosity." Reed watched the orders go out, his heart heavy. The tactical displays showed their fleet moving into attack formation, their most powerful ships taking the lead. On paper, it looked impressive. 2,000 of the most advanced warships in known space, representing the combined military might of 23 ancient civilizations. But Reed had studied the footage from the outer fleet battle. He had seen how the Thunderchild moved, how it shrugged off hits that should have vaporized planets. The humans weren't just ahead of them technologically. They were playing an entirely different game. As he watched the fleet prepare for battle, Reed couldn't help but think of old human stories about the Titanic, a ship called unsinkable right up until it sank. The Council's arrogance had built them an empire. Now, that same arrogance was going to tear it down. "Sir," he tried one last time, "we should at least evacuate the civilian centers." Stone didn't even look at him. The only thing evacuating today will be those humans, straight into the void of space. Reed looked at the countdown timer. 25 minutes until the humans' deadline. 25 minutes until the council learned exactly how far they had fallen behind. The control room fell silent as space itself seemed to tear open. A massive black shape emerged from the hyperspace rupture, its hull drinking in the light of the nearby sun. The HSS Thunderchild had arrived. On the main display, numbers flickered as the sensors tried to process what they were seeing. The human warship dwarfed everything in the Council's fleet. Its length of 15 kilometers was just the beginning. The vessel's hull featured layers upon layers of technology that the Council's best scientists couldn't even begin to understand. By the stars, one of the sensor operators whispered, "The power readings. They're off the scale." Commander Reed studied the ship's design. Unlike the smooth, elegant curves of Council vessels, the Thunderchild was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Massive gun batteries lined its sides, and what looked like entire cities were built into armored sections of its hull. "Sir," a communications officer called out. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The main screen lit up, showing the Thunderchild's bridge. Unlike the cramped command centers of Council ships, this was a vast chamber with multiple levels. Captain Wells stood at its center, still wearing his black battle armor. "Council forces," he said calmly. "Your deadline has expired. However, in the interest of preventing unnecessary loss of life, I am offering one final opportunity for peaceful resolution." Stone stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. "You dare dictate terms to us? We have you surrounded. 2,000 ships against your one." Wells didn't even blink. "Numbers mean nothing when the technological gap is this wide. Your entire fleet couldn't scratch our paint." He gestured to a hologram floating beside him. "These are our terms. First, the Council will submit to a full investigation of their crimes against emerging civilizations. Second—" "Enough," Stone shouted. "Let me make our position clear, human. Either you retreat immediately, or we will destroy not just your ship, but your entire planet." A small smile crossed Wells' face. "Ah, I was wondering when you'd make that threat." He pressed a button, and new images appeared on every screen in the Council's command center. They showed Earth, but not the Earth the Council remembered. Massive orbital rings circled the planet. Space stations the size of cities floated in perfect formation. And around it all, a field of strange energy sparkled like diamonds against the black of space. "You still think we're the same humans you dismissed a decade ago," Wells said softly. "The Earth you knew, the vulnerable planet you thought you could threaten, doesn't exist anymore. We've built defenses that would make your most powerful weapons look like children's toys." Reed stepped closer to the screen, his military training letting him spot details others might miss. The orbital defenses around Earth weren't just impressive, they were impossible. The technology required to build such structures was centuries beyond what the Council possessed. "How?" he found himself asking. "How did you advance so fast?" "Necessity," Wells replied. "Your restrictions, your dismissal, your constant reminders of our primitive status, they all pushed us to prove you wrong. You gave us the greatest gift possible: motivation." Stone had gone pale, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Deploy the fleet. All ships. Open. Wait." Reed grabbed Stone's arm. "Sir, look at their weapon systems." The Thunderchild's massive gun batteries had begun to glow, each one emanating more power than an entire Council battleship. But it was the main cannon that drew everyone's attention. Running the length of the ship, it was now gathering energy that made their sensors scream in protest. "That's impossible," Stone whispered. "Nothing can generate that much power." "Final warning," Wells announced. "Stand down your forces, or we will demonstrate exactly why challenging humanity was your worst mistake." The command center erupted in chaos as officers argued about what to do. Some wanted to attack immediately, others begged to surrender. But Reed noticed something that chilled him to his core. The humans weren't afraid. Despite facing overwhelming numbers, they showed no fear, no concern. They weren't acting like warriors preparing for battle. They were acting like adults preparing to discipline unruly children. The next few minutes would show everyone in the galaxy exactly why. Space lit up like a newborn star as 500 council ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and quantum warheads streaked across the void, all aimed at the massive form of the Thunderchild. Commander Reed watched through the command center's main viewport, his breath held. The combined firepower of the first wave could have cracked a planet in half. Surely, no ship could survive such an assault. The explosions lasted for 30 seconds, creating a massive cloud of energy and debris that blocked their sensors. Stone smiled triumphantly. See, they weren't so. His words died as the cloud cleared. The Thunderchild floated unchanged, its black hull unmarked. Not even a scratch showed where the Council's most powerful weapons had struck. Impossible, Stone whispered. Nothing could have survived that. Sir, a sensor operator called out in panic. The human ship. It's powering up its defensive systems. Thousands of points of light appeared across the Thunderchild's hull. For a moment, they looked like stars against its black surface. Then Reed realized what they were seeing. Point defense systems, he said quietly. All ships, evasive action. Now. But it was too late. The Thunderchild's defense grid opened up, filling space with an intricate web of energy beams. Each shot found its target with perfect precision. Council ships began exploding by the dozens, then hundreds. By the ancient stars, an officer whispered. They're targeting systems. They're hitting our weapons banks directly. They're not just shooting our ships, they're surgically disabling them. Reed watched in horror as his worst predictions came true. The Thunderchild wasn't just superior. It was operating on a level that made the Council's most advanced technology look primitive. A new energy reading caught his attention. The main cannon, he shouted. There. A beam of pure white energy lanced out from the Thunderchild's bow, cutting through space itself. It passed through 20 Council capital ships as if they were made of paper, leaving perfect circular holes through their centers. The ships didn't explode, they simply died, their systems shutting down as the beam's energy disrupted everything it touched. Status report, Stone demanded, his voice shaking. We've lost. The tactical officer paused, swallowing hard. We've lost 347 ships. Another 150 are disabled. They're targeting our command and control systems with some kind of energy pulse that passes right through our shields. Stone stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In less than 5 minutes, a single human ship had destroyed nearly half their fleet. Ships that had taken decades to build, crews that had trained their entire lives. Gone in moments. Launch the second wave, Stone ordered. All remaining ships concentrate fire on their main cannon. Sir, Reed tried to intervene. We need tow. The Thunderchild moved. Despite its massive size, it accelerated faster than their smallest fighters. It rolled to present its broadside to the approaching Council fleet, and new weapon ports opened along its hull. Energy spike. Someone shouted. Multiple signatures. There. Gravity itself seemed to twist as the human ship unleashed its secondary weapons. Balls of compressed space-time shot out, each one creating a localized distortion field. Council ships caught in these fields crumpled like paper toys, their hulls squeezed by forces they were never designed to resist. This isn't a battle, Reed realized aloud. This is target practice for them. The remaining Council ships began to break formation, their crews' discipline cracking in the face of such overwhelming power. Some tried to retreat, others continued their suicidal charges toward the Thunderchild. Through it all, Captain Wells' voice came through clear on all channels. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot escape us. Your technology cannot match us. Stand down and accept the justice you have long denied others. Stone watched his mighty fleet crumbling before a single human ship, his face ashen. What have we awakened? He whispered. What have we created? Reed knew the answer. The Council's arrogance and cruelty had forced humanity to advance faster than any species in history. They had pushed humans to achieve the impossible simply to survive. And now, they were paying the price for their mistake. Smoke filled the Council's command center as damaged systems sparked and failed. Through the giant viewport, the remains of their once proud fleet drifted like dead leaves in space. Nearly 1,000 ships destroyed or disabled in less than 15 minutes. Sir, Reed reported, his voice heavy. We've lost contact with 60% of our remaining fleet. The human ship's weapons are disrupting our command networks. Stone stood silent, watching the Thunderchild move through their defenses like a knife through water. His hands gripped the command rail so hard his knuckles had turned white. Get me Research Station Deep 9, he suddenly ordered. Reed's blood ran cold. Sir, the experimental weapon. It hasn't been properly tested. The risks are better than certain defeat, Stone snapped. He turned to face the remaining command staff. You've all heard the rumors. For 20 years, our best scientists have been working on the ultimate weapon. Today, we use it. The main screen flickered to life, showing a massive space station hidden in the system's asteroid belt. At its center sat a device that seemed to bend light around itself, the gravity bomb. Project Director, Stone commanded, activate the weapon. The scientist on screen looked nervous. Sir, our simulations show a 30% chance the device could create a black hole large enough to swallow the entire system. We need more time, We don't have time. The humans are tearing through our last line of defense. Activate it now. As the scientists began the activation sequence, Reed noticed something odd about the Thunderchild's movements. The massive ship had stopped its advance and seemed to be scanning the asteroid field. Sir, a sensor operator called out. The human ship, its changing configuration. The Thunderchild's hull began to shift. Massive panels slid apart, revealing layers of technology that made their best scientists' jaws drop. The ship's center opened like a blooming flower, revealing what looked like a miniature sun contained within layers of energy fields. Energy readings are, this can't be right. The operator stammered. They're generating more power than our entire civilization uses in a year. On the screen, the gravity bomb began to pulse with dark energy. Space around it started to twist and distort as it prepared to create its artificial black hole. Captain Wells' voice came through all channels, sounding almost amused. A gravity bomb. Interesting. Outdated by about 50 years. But interesting. Stone leaned forward. You won't sound so confident when it tears your ship apart. You still don't understand what you're facing, Wells replied. We mastered gravity manipulation before you even detected us in your space. Here, let us show you how it's really done. The artificial sun at the Thunderchild's core pulsed once. A wave of invisible force spread out across space. When it reached the research station, the gravity bomb just stopped. Not just deactivated, it ceased to exist. Its very atoms gently pulled apart and scattered to the solar winds. The entire station's staff stood frozen, staring at empty space where their ultimate weapon had been. Impossible, the project director whispered. The energy required to do that. It violates every law of physics we know. No, Wells corrected. It violates every law of physics you know. The Thunderchild's central core began to pulse faster. Now allow us to demonstrate true mastery over gravity. The remaining council ships suddenly found themselves unable to move. Space itself seemed to become thick like honey around them, holding them in place. Full control over gravitational fields, Wells explained casually. We can increase it, decrease it, or direct it as we please. Your gravity bomb was like a child playing with blocks compared to this. Reed watched as the Thunderchild's core continued to brighten. Their sensors were showing impossible readings. The human ship was somehow controlling the very fabric of space-time around it. Sir, he said quietly to Stone, I think we need to consider. No, Stone slammed his fist down. "I won't surrender, Toe." The deck beneath them shuddered as the Thunderchild exerted its power. Their mighty command center, the heart of the Council's military might, began rising into space, lifted by invisible forces they couldn't begin to fight. The message was clear. The Council's time of power was over. The age of humanity had begun. The Council's command center hung suspended in space, held motionless by the Thunderchild's gravity control. Through the viewport, officers watched helplessly as their remaining ships floated like dead fish in an invisible sea. "Message incoming," the communications officer announced. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, including civilian channels. They're overriding our encryption." Captain Wells appeared on every screen in the system. Behind him stood Admiral Gray, and now they could see others on the Thunderchild's bridge. Humans in various uniforms, each representing different Earth organizations. "People of the Galactic Council," Wells began, his voice steady. "You've been told that this attack was about humanity's exclusion from galactic affairs. That was only part of the truth. Now you will learn why we really came." The screen split, showing what looked like sensor logs and ancient records. 50 years ago, humanity launched deep space probes beyond Council space. We wanted to find other emerging civilizations like ourselves. Instead, we found graves. Images began playing across every display in the command center. They showed dead worlds, civilizations burned, planets stripped of life, entire species wiped out just as they were reaching for the stars. "At first, we thought these were natural disasters," Wells continued. "But our probes found something else. Council ships, secret fleets, hidden bases, all tied to a systematic campaign of genocide against any species that might one day challenge Council power." Stone's face had gone pale. How did you access those records?" "They were encrypted, hidden in quantum vaults." "Your encryption was primitive." Wells cut him off. Like everything else about the Council, it relied on assumptions that were centuries out of date. New images appeared, beautiful worlds full of life, strange cities, alien species no human had ever seen. All of them now extinct. "The bright ones of Antares 7, Admiral Gray spoke up. "A species that had just discovered fusion power. Their sun mysteriously went nova." He paused. "Except our probes found Council energy signatures in that nova." Another image. "The crystal singers of the deep reaches. A water-based civilization about to achieve faster-than-light travel. Their oceans suddenly became toxic." He looked directly at Stone. "Convenient for the Council's mining operations, wasn't it?" Reed felt sick as he watched. The images kept coming. World after world, species after species, all destroyed just as they were about to join the galactic community. 13 species, Wells said quietly. 13 civilizations wiped out in the last century alone. But you made one crucial mistake. You missed us. And unlike those other species, we had something they didn't. We knew you were coming." The screen showed Earth again, but this time they could see the truth. Those weren't just orbital rings and defense stations. They were monuments. Each one bore the name and history of a destroyed species, written in their own languages. "Everything we built," Wells continued, "every advancement we made, was dedicated to their memory. We pushed ourselves beyond normal development rates because we knew what would happen if we failed. Every breakthrough, every impossible achievement was driven by one goal: to become strong enough to bring their killers to justice." The Thunderchild's core pulsed again, and suddenly the Council ships could move once more. But none of them fled. None of them fired. Their crews had seen the truth, and centuries of loyalty to the Council were crumbling in the face of it. "We're not here for revenge," Admiral Gray said firmly. "If we were, your worlds would already be ash. We're here for justice, for reform, for change." Stone slumped in his command chair, the weight of exposed sins finally breaking his pride. How did you advance so fast? Even knowing we were coming, It should have taken centuries to develop this level of technology. Wells smiled, but there was sadness in it, because we had something you forgot about long ago: empathy. Each destroyed species left behind fragments of their knowledge, their dreams, their potential. We found those fragments. We honored them. We learned from them. And in doing so, we surpassed you. The truth had been revealed. Now, the galaxy waited to see what humanity would do with its victory. The Great Council chamber looked different now. The floating platforms had been lowered, the towering pillars of authority stripped bare. Sunlight streamed through the once darkened windows, illuminating the changes taking place. Where once 23 council species sat in elevated positions, now representatives from over 100 civilizations gathered on equal ground. The younger races, once deemed too primitive for contact, sat alongside the ancient powers. And at the center of it all stood the humans. Admiral Gray watched as Captain Wells finished installing the final memorial. A crystalline display showing the 13 lost civilizations, their languages, their achievements, their dreams, all preserved and honored in the heart of what was once their destroyer's seat of power. The final vote stands at unanimous, announced the new Senate Speaker, a young member of a species that just weeks ago would have been considered too primitive for council contact. The Galactic Senate will replace the former council, with all species having equal representation regardless of technological advancement. Commander Reed, now serving as a liaison between the old guard and the new order, stepped forward. And what of the former council members? Those who ordered the xenocide campaigns? Admiral Gray's response was firm but measured. Justice doesn't mean revenge. They will stand trial, with representatives from all species serving as judges. Their punishment will be to help rebuild what they tried to destroy. The Thunderchild hung visible in the sky above the Senate building, its massive form no longer a threat but a promise, a guardian ensuring the new age would not repeat the mistakes of the old. We've located 16 more emerging civilizations, Wells announced to the gathered representatives, species that the old council would have marked for destruction. Instead, we will guide them, protect them, help them reach their potential. The Senate chamber's main display activated, showing the changes already taking place. Human ships, working alongside reformed council vessels, were dismantling the old border weapons platforms. In their place rose navigation beacons and welcome stations for new species venturing into space for the first time. Stone, stripped of his titles, but allowed to witness the changes, watched from a corner. "I still don't understand," he said quietly to Reed. "You have the power to rule everything, to do whatever you want. Why give it up?" "Because that's exactly what the old council would have done," Reed replied, understanding humanity better now. They're not interested in ruling. They're interested in growing, learning, helping others avoid the mistakes we made. The displays showed more images, human scientists working with younger species, sharing knowledge but letting them develop their own path. The orbital rings around Earth had become universities where representatives from 100 worlds came to learn and share. "We've modified the Thunderchild," Wells announced to the Senate. "It's no longer just a warship. We've converted half its space into research laboratories and diplomatic facilities. It will serve as a mobile platform for first contact missions, protecting and guiding new species as they join our community." Admiral Gray stepped forward. "But let this ship also stand as a reminder. Any attempt to return to the old ways, to destroy or suppress emerging civilizations, will be met with the full force of human protection." He paused. "We remember what it was like to be the ones looking up at the stars in fear. Never again." The Senate chamber erupted in applause. Species that had once been mortal enemies now stood together, united in a vision of a galaxy where strength meant protection, not dominance. As the session ended, Reed approached Wells. "The Thunderchild's next mission." Wells smiled. "We detected radio signals from a promising world in the Outer Rim. Young species, just splitting their first atom. The old council would have marked them for death." His eyes sparkled. We're going to welcome them to the stars. Above the Senate building, the Thunderchild's hull gleamed in the sunlight. Once an instrument of justice, now a symbol of protection. The galaxy was entering a new age, not one of council dominance or human rule, but of genuine cooperation and growth. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had changed the very nature of galactic civilization, and they had done it not through destruction, but through the one force the old council never understood: hope.